Saigon doesn't sleep, it just gets quieter, the way a held breath gets quieter right before someone screams. In the alleys behind District 1, where the concrete cracks like old skin and the gutters run black no matter the season, Min pushed his porridge cart down the same broken road every single night of his life, wheels squealing over potholes like the city was laughing at him. He hadn't always pushed a cart. 3 years ago, Min owned a lumber mill, a house with a garden, a wife who never had to work a market stall in her life. Then a truck jackknifed into the mill yard, and the fire that followed took the business, the house, and every plan Min ever had. What it left behind was debt stacked so high it followed him into his dreams, and a one-room shack in the slum, where the cockroaches moved in before the family finished unpacking. Min's older son, Thon, drove a motorbike taxi and wore his bitterness like a uniform. The younger, Jung, still dreamed of the old house, still believed some miracle would hand it back to him. How sold sandwiches from dawn until their hands cracked and calloused. And every night, Min stood behind his cart, ladling porridge into bowls for factory workers, wondering if any god, any spirit, any force in this world still had a reason to notice a man like him. That reason never came. Only something else did. One evening, business died. Not slowed, died. Customers who sat down would take one bite, go pale, and bolt without paying. By the time the streetlights buzzed on, Min sat alone with a cart full of unsold soup and a headache from the heat. That's when the stranger sat down. He wore an old black vest, too big for the thin frame underneath, and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low enough to swallow his face. An iron suitcase, rusted and ancient, sat by his feet, and it rang softly, almost musically, every time he shifted his weight, the way old coins ring inside a coffin. The man said,
"I'll take a bowl, even cold."
Min warned him the porridge had gone cold an hour ago, that it wouldn't taste right. The stranger smiled, and the smile did not warm his face. It cooled the whole street by several degrees.
I prefer it that way. I prefer talking to people who need something too.
Need. The word sat wrong in Min's chest, heavier than it should have been. As the man ate, the streetlight caught his face beneath the hat brim. Just for a second, bone white. A mask, grinning too wide. Eyes like holes with nothing behind them. And the smell coming off him wasn't porridge, it was old copper, wet earth. A morgue on a hot afternoon.
"You're drowning in debt,"
the stranger said between spoonfuls, not looking up.
"Once you had everything. A house, a garden. Now you push a cart down a road that smells like a sewer and you tell yourself it's temporary. It isn't. I can fix that. All it costs you is a little courage and a promise."
He pulled a warped, yellowed board from the suitcase. The wood, the color and texture of old skin. Letters, numbers, yes, no, goodbye. Written at the bottom in ink so dark it looked wet.
"You know this game."
Min's voice shook. "Calling the dead?" the man said, and laughed, low and rattling, like something dragging itself across gravel.
"That's her children. Grown men like you call something else what you need. They lend it freely, but borrowed things get repaid. A proper offering, chickens, wine, paper gold, fool it on time. Break your word and they trade up to something else."
Min's throat went dry. Something else? Like what? The stranger only stood, gathered his suitcase, and walked into the alley's shadow. Before the dark swallowed him whole, he turned back one final time.
"Borrow from the devil and you pay the devil back. For nothing in heaven or on this earth will save you."
He laughed again, that same rattling sound, and was gone, leaving behind a smell like something buried too shallow. That night, over candlelight in the cramped shack, the family argued. Dao begged him not to touch anything demonic, her voice cracking. The women at the market say this game destroys whole families. Pon scoffed at superstition, insisting money never falls from the sky. Jiang, hungry for the old life in a way that scared even himself, pushed hardest. What have we got to lose that we haven't already lost? Min, out of road and out of hope, finally gave in. I don't want this either, but we're already at the end of the road. He laid the warped board across the table, set an upturned glass in the center. One by one, shaking, they rested a single fingertip on the rim. Min said, forcing his voice steady, "Spirits, if anyone is listening, give us a sign. Our family is suffering, we're asking for a chance." Silence swallowed the room, thick enough to hear the clock ticking on the wall. Then the glass trembled, faintly at first, as though an unseen hand had brushed against it from beneath the floor. The temperature dropped so fast that goose flesh crawled up every arm at the table, and Min could have sworn something was standing directly behind him, breathing against the back of his neck. The glass crept, slow and certain, to yes. Min asked, "Ghost, or something worse?" The glass slid straight to a single word, "Devil." Jiang, greedy and terrified in equal measure, blurted the request before anyone could stop him. "Alone? In exchange for a proper offering?" The glass spelled its answer letter by letter, cold and final. "I lend, you repay. Late means death." The candle snapped out. In the dark, something laughed, low and close, right against each of their ears. The next day, a stranger selling lottery tickets appeared to Min, then separately to Dao, then to Than, each of them in different corners of the city, each pressured into buying the same 6 numbers from a man in a low hat they'd never seen before. None of them mentioned it to each other until dinner, when the coincidence turned their blood to ice. That night, the radio called the numbers. Every single one matched. The family won the jackpot. They rebuilt everything. The mansion, the mill, new businesses for the boys. Dao tried, more than once, to remind Min about the offering they'd promised. Min always smiled, always said this weekend, and this weekend kept sliding into the next, buried under parties and the easy amnesia that comes with wealth. Then the knocking started. 2 floors up, on a window with no ledge outside it, nothing for anyone to stand on. Mrs. Dao dreamed of a headless man demanding his due. In the garage, an old car roared to life on its own, headlights blazing like something hungry. Jiang woke with claw marks on his arms after dreaming he drove through Saigon with faceless passengers in the back seat. Terrified, the family finally gathered the offerings, ga, root, vang ma, and laid the board out under a broken moon, begging forgiveness. The glass didn't ask for chickens or wine. Too late. Blood now. Choose one. The family turned on each other, screaming, blaming, until Min stood, silent and suddenly very old, and understood the plain truth of it. No devil had ever been as dangerous as human greed, he said. It started with me. Take me instead. He grabbed the board, held it to his chest, and walked into the ritual fire. The flames swallowed him whole, and from the center of the blaze came a scream that curdled into laughter that wasn't his. By morning, the mansion sat in silence, nothing left in the garden but ash and a single scrap of scorched black fabric caught on the fence. Police found no other trace of Min at all. Months later, Mrs. Dao sold the house for almost nothing and vanished with her sons. Some nights, in the rain-soaked alleys of Saigon, people still swear they hear it. The soft, rhythmic clink of an old iron suitcase, dragging closer, waiting for whoever's desperate enough to sit down next. He paid his debt on time. Once. That's rarer than you'd think. Most people believe a promise made in the dark ends the moment the sun comes up. It doesn't. The village sat 2 hours outside the city, close enough for cell service, far enough that the rice paddies still swallowed the sound of traffic whole. Lynn had grown up there, in her grandmother's wooden house with its sagging tile roof and its garden of areca palms, until the old woman passed the year Lynn turned 16. The house never felt right afterward. Rooms that used to smell like ginger and burning incense now just smelled empty, and every creak of the floorboards at night made Lynn's chest tighten with a grief she didn't have words for yet. So when her cousin Bao came to stay for the summer and suggested trying the spirit board they'd both seen in some late-night video online, half joke, half genuine curiosity, Lynn said yes before she'd fully thought it through. Some small, aching part of her wanted it to be real, wanted one more conversation, even a fake one, even a dangerous one. They did it properly, or as properly as two teenagers with a laminated printout of letters and an upturned teacup could manage, candles scavenged from a kitchen drawer, incense stolen from the family altar downstairs, still warm from that morning's offering. A question whispered into the dark of the old wooden house, barely louder than the crickets outside. In the flickering candlelight, the letters on the board seemed to shift slightly out of focus, like heat rising off summer pavement, and the rain against the window outside grew just faintly quieter. "Grandmother, are you there?" The cup shivered, then slid, slow and deliberate, to yes. Lynn's chest cracked open with something between grief and joy so sharp it nearly doubled her over. She asked question after question, things only her grandmother would know. The name of the dog they'd owned when Lynn was 6, long dead now, buried under the mango tree out back. The song her grandmother hummed while cooking, an old lullaby with no real words, just soft repeating syllables. The exact spot on her wrist where she wore her jade bracelet every single day of her life. Every answer came back correct, letter by patient letter, and every correct answer pulled Lynn in a little deeper, until the tears on her face weren't from grief anymore, they were from something closer to relief. Bao, less sentimental, noticed things Lynn didn't. The cup never hesitated, not once. Not even on questions that should have taken a real spirit time to consider. Real spirits, he'd read somewhere online, were supposed to struggle, to spell slowly, uncertainly, sometimes even get details wrong the way human memory does. This thing answered like it already knew every question before it was asked, like it had rehearsed the entire conversation long before the two of them ever sat down at the board. They came back the next night, and the next. Every session, Lynn grew a little more convinced, a little more comforted, a little more willing to overlook the small wrongnesses stacking up quietly in the background. The cup was always warm to the touch after they finished, even though the room stayed cold. The candle flames leaned toward Lynn no matter which direction the night air moved. And once, just once, Lynn could have sworn the shadow the teacup threw across the board had 5 fingers instead of none at all. Lynn started sleeping badly, waking at 3 a.m., to a smell like old incense and wet soil drifting through a closed window, and a faint pressure at the foot of her bed, like someone sitting there, watching, waiting for her to wake all the way up. She told herself it was memory playing tricks. Grief does that. 2 weeks in, Lynn asked the board a question she hadn't planned. "Grandmother, do you miss the house?" The cup answered instantly, no hesitation at all. "Yes, come outside. I want to show you something." Bao grabbed Lynn's wrist before she could stand, his own hand shaking. "Grandmothers don't ask you to come outside at midnight. Things that want you outside at midnight aren't grandmothers." He'd gone pale, staring at the cup like it had grown teeth. "Lynn, look at it. It hasn't stopped moving since we sat down. It's not waiting for the question anymore, it's just answering. It already knows what you're going to ask before you ask it." Lynn wanted to argue, wanted to believe the voice on the other side of that glass was really her grandmother. But some old animal instinct in her chest agreed with Bauer completely, and that frightened her more than anything the board had spelled out so far. They ended the session properly that night, said goodbye, watched the cup slide with visible reluctance to the corner of the board, as though something on the other end were fighting to stay a little longer. But something had already noticed the shape of Lynn's grief, had already learned exactly which voice would open the door widest, and closing a door once it knows your name doesn't mean it agrees to stay on the other side of it. 3 nights later, walking home from a neighbor's house, Lynn heard humming behind her. Her grandmother's song, note for note, drifting from the tree line at the edge of the paddy field. She should have run. Instead, she called out, "Grandmother?" The humming stopped. Then, from somewhere much closer than the tree line, much closer than anything with a body should have been able to move, a voice answered, using her grandmother's exact inflection, her exact warmth. "Come find me, my granddaughter." Lynn ran the rest of the way home and locked every door for the first time in a house that had never once needed locking. It didn't stay outside for long. Objects in her grandmother's old room began shifting overnight. Always the same 3 items: a comb, a photograph, a jade bracelet, arranged neatly on the bed each morning like an offering laid out by someone remembering the dead woman's habits with unsettling precision. Lynn's mother assumed it was Lynn, sleepwalking through grief. Lynn knew better. She'd started locking that door too, though the lock never seemed to matter for long. The humming followed her into the fields while she helped her mother with the harvest, into the market between stalls of dried fish and bundled herbs, into dreams where her grandmother's face wore an expression the real woman never had, a wide, patient smile that didn't quite reach anywhere close to warm. In the dreams, the old woman's eyes never blinked, not once, and her voice, when she spoke, arrived a half second out of sync with her moving mouth, like a badly dubbed film. Bao begged Lynn to burn the printout, to salt the doorways, to do anything the internet forums suggested. But by then, Lynn had stopped answering his calls. Some nights she caught herself standing at the garden gate at 2 a.m., barefoot, with no memory of leaving her bed, staring out at the tree line where the humming always seemed to start. On the 1-month anniversary of the first session, Lynn woke at 3 a.m. to her bedroom door standing open, though she'd locked it, and the lock still sat engaged, untouched, impossible. Standing in the frame was a shape with her grandmother's silhouette, wearing her grandmother's favorite aubaba, humming her grandmother's song note for note, perfect and wrong all at once. It didn't move. It didn't need to. It simply raised one hand, fingers a little too long, joints a little too many, and beckoned exactly the way her grandmother used to when dinner was ready. Lynn has never told anyone what she said back, or what answered her. She moved to the city 2 months later. She still hums that song sometimes, without meaning to, and every time she catches herself doing it, she has to stop and ask herself a question she can never quite answer. Whose voice is she actually remembering? Grief is the easiest door in the world to walk through. You don't even need an invitation. You just need someone missing a voice badly enough to answer when they hear it again. The apartment block was old even by the standards of the city. 6 floors of cracked stairwells and buzzing fluorescent lights that flickered on a 2-second delay. The kind of building where every family knew every other family's business through the paper-thin walls, and where the elevator hadn't worked since before any of the current tenants moved in. On the 4th floor, 4 friends hung my twirn and earn, gathered in Mai's cramped living room on a rainy Saturday night, rain hammering the tin awning outside like impatient knuckles, thunder rolling somewhere out over the river, mostly for the thrill of it, half convinced nothing would actually happen, and secretly, guiltily hoping they were wrong. Mai had found the board in a second-hand shop 2 streets over, warped at the corners, the letters faded to a dull gray, tucked behind a box of chipped teacups nobody ever seemed to buy. The shopkeeper had refused to explain where it came from, only muttering that some things were better sold than kept, and pricing it low enough that Mai suspected he just wanted it out of his shop before closing. That should have been warning enough. It wasn't. Something answered on the second question. It called itself an old resident of the building, dead for decades, and it spelled out details that, checked out later, a name nobody in the group recognized, a death date from before any of them were born, a room number that used to exist before renovation years back, combined 2 smaller units into the very apartment they now sat in. The friends were thrilled and terrified in equal measure. Exactly the cocktail that makes teenagers keep going long after they should stop, leaning in closer with every answer instead of pulling away. They were 40 minutes in, deep in questions about the building's other deaths, the entity growing more specific, more eager, spelling out details about a fire on the 2nd floor decades back that none of them could have possibly known, when Mai's mother banged on the door, demanding to know why the lights were off and why 4 kids were huddled around candles at midnight. Panic hit the room like a physical wave. In the scramble to hide the board, blow out the candles, and shove everything under the couch before Mai's mother pushed the door open, nobody said goodbye. Nobody watched the cup slide to that final word. The session simply stopped mid-conversation, the way you'd hang up on someone mid-sentence without warning, leaving whatever was on the other end of that line still talking into silence, still waiting for someone to pick back up. Mai's mother scolded them for playing with candles near the curtains and left, never once noticing the board itself, half hidden beneath a couch cushion, or the way the glass on top of it had shifted position slightly, all on its own, in the 2 minutes it took her to leave the room. For the first 2 days, nothing happened, and the friends half convinced themselves they'd gotten away with it, that the interruption hadn't mattered, that the dead didn't really keep score. Then Twan started hearing his name called from empty rooms, a voice with the same dry, papery quality the board's answers had carried in tone, if a tone can carry through spelled out letters, always coming from whichever room he'd just left, never the one he was standing in. Yurn's phone began recording 30-second audio clips on its own overnight, time-stamped well past 3 a.m., always the same, low static, and once, unmistakably, the sound of slow, patient breathing directly against the microphone. Mai found her bedroom door standing open every morning, no matter how carefully she locked it, the deadbolt still thrown, the chain still fastened, as though something had simply walked through the wood itself. On the 4th night, she woke to find the board itself, which she was certain she'd shoved deep into her closet under a stack of winter blankets, laid out neatly on her bedroom floor, the glass sitting dead center, exactly where a hand would leave it, mid-sentence, and the room 10 degrees colder than the hallway outside. They called Hung, who by then hadn't slept in 2 days, hollow-eyed and jumping at every shadow the fluorescent lights threw. He admitted he'd started hearing it too, footsteps that matched his own pace exactly, half a step behind him on the stairwell, stopping the instant he stopped, starting again the instant he moved. Patient in a way that made his skin crawl worse than if it had simply attacked him outright. Twice now he'd turned around fast enough to catch, just barely, the tail end of a shadow slipping behind the stairwell door, a shadow with no one attached to it who could have possibly cast it. The 4 of them reconvened, desperate and exhausted, in Mai's living room again, candles lit with shaking hands, none of them having slept properly in days. They set the board out and begged whatever they'd left hanging on the other end of that unfinished conversation to let them finish properly, to let them apologize, to let them close the door the right way this time. The cup didn't move for a long, agonizing minute, long enough that Ian started crying quietly, certain nothing was going to answer at all, certain they'd already broken something too badly to fix. Then, all at once the cup lurched, not to yes, not to any letter at all, but straight to goodbye, hard enough to nearly tip over, and stop there, dead center, unmoving no matter how hard any of them pushed against the glass afterward, as though something on the other side had grabbed the word with both hands and simply refused to let it go until it was good and ready. The footsteps stopped that week. The phone stopped recording strange static in the small hours. Twern stopped hearing his name called from empty rooms down the hall. But Mai still finds her bedroom door standing open some mornings, deadbolt thrown, chain still fastened, no explanation at all. And every so often, usually late at night, usually when she's home alone with the rain drumming against the tin awning outside, she'll catch the faint, dry scrape of something sliding across glass in the next room, patient, unhurried, spelling out a word one letter at a time that she's too afraid to go and read. She has a rule now, one she tells anyone who listen, one she wishes someone had told her before that rainy Saturday night. If you ever open that door, you finish the conversation no matter who's banging on the other door behind you, you always, always let it say goodbye. Sometimes, late at night, she wonders what would have happened if her mother had knocked 30 seconds later. Whether the conversation would have ended on its own, quietly, the way it was supposed to. Or whether something had simply been waiting all along for an excuse to be interrupted. Some doors don't stay shut just because you stop talking through them. 3 files, 3 doors, 3 people who thought a board and a glass couldn't possibly cost them anything real. Here's the part nobody tells you before they sit down at one of these things. It was never really about the dead. The dead are easy. The dead just want to be remembered. It's what's underneath the dead that keeps the ledger, and it never ever forgets who still owes it something. If you hear a suitcase dragging behind you tonight, on a quiet street, in the rain, don't turn around. I already know you're there. I'll see you in the next week. Goodbye and sweet dreams.